So, currently it's RSF2. They're seeking PUD benefits, which would include rezoning to RMF3. And so in that, they're also asking for 7.5 feet. Well, I'm sorry, bellwether is 5 feet. I might have misspoke there at the end. But they're asking for 7.5 feet there, where it is 10 and 5 feet under. Now, in every aspect, Amberley meets all of the required setbacks from the front, the streets, the front porch, the rear, the principal building height, and the driveway depth and everything else. But this is not, again, part of bellwether. They don't get the amenities. There is no, the park being dedicated is not part of this subdivision. They've clearly stated that it is separate. I'm wondering why we're even including it as part of a PUD.
The park is, I just want to clarify one thing before you start your discussion. The park dedication is being calculated for Amberley and Bellwether together. So the calculations in the staff report about what's due is based on the whole development.
Okay.
So just to be clear on that.
Okay, and I'm not suggesting we taking it out, but what I'm suggesting is, here is a development of single-family homes that developers asking for, again, leniency on width and then design standards. But yet I don't see a direct benefit. Okay? So, I'm not against taking it out of the PUD and messing up everything there. The only question here is, do we want to hold the standard as directed in the RSF3 zoning? I mean, to take them out of this and hold them to the RSF2, that would change things maybe even a little bit more significantly. But we have comments from our community constantly, and we've heard it before, but they're asking for maybe a little bit more buffer. Now, changing the dimensions or the width between the two properties isn't going to make this a whole lot more, but it might result in a few more homes. It might be, at least for once, we can have a development that isn't built based upon the generous askings and givings by the city for PUD standards, which I think we're all getting a little burnt out on. It would be wonderful to see, 10 feet, on each side of the property, make it look more normal. I don't recall that we've even had a development inside the Musaline that wasn't a PUD, that wasn't 10 feet apart from each other. And if there's ever a case to say that these 76 homes probably could stand on their own without the benefit of PUD protections or zoning, I would say this is probably one of those cases. So, anybody have any comments? And again, the only thing that's different here is they're asking for 7.5 feet on the side setbacks, where 10 and 5 would be normal. So, yes, sir.
My question, going back to what Kendra said, Amberley is the single-family homes, right? And then Bellwether is the 55 and older. Was there an agreement from our previous council and mayor about that 5-foot setback on both sides to continue Bellwether?
There was no agreement. There was
Okay.
a conversation with this council in January. Would you support this concept?
Okay, all right,
But no formal approval.
all right. I don't want things changing the look. I know the developer is going down a road and such, and I understand that. I just, if it was already kind of guided or they're directed to go to that, I just was curious. Again, we're dealing with that switch over at the beginning of the year of one new mayor and two new council members and such, and I want to make sure we aren't miscommunicating either to the current landowner, the future landowner, the developer stuff. I wanted to make sure we had no confusion there. I did, to your comments, Commissioner or Chair Jacobs, it would be nice if we could start sometime. Is this the appropriate time? I don't know. It'd be nice to just put our foot down and say it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, let's all remember that as part of the PUD, they are getting RMF 3
Yep.
versus RMF 2, and they are getting architectural relief here. So it's not like they're not getting any benefit at all
Right.
here. I'm just saying, let's maintain what is currently on the books for the side yard setbacks.
Yeah.
And quit treating this like it is purely a PUD, you know, so.
And again, I wanted to recognize too, the commitment of helping us find a water tower location, helping us find a well location, and those kind of things. Whether or not it's in the drawn up area or not, it's nice to have that involvement
Yeah,
related with the developer and stuff,
Yeah.
so.
Mr. Lannerman.
Mr. Chair, the sole reason to request the variance from 10 feet down to 7.5 feet isn't to keep the math nice. It's an effort to squeeze more homes onto that piece of land. And a PUD should not be granted on the request for more profit. It should not be a financial consideration for the applicant.
And I would agree with you 100%. I don't see the PUD, if I see it as anything, it's a tool to get more homes and circumvent our
Yeah.
our
And that's
regular,
how it's
our
being
regular,
used here.
you know, I mean, there are some benefits that we do get. We won't
Mr.
downplay
Chair.
that, but I think you're right. And in this case, I don't see any reason.
That is not correct.
Okay.
5 and 10 equals 15. 7.5 and 7.5 equals 15.
Yep.
I'm sure if we asked Paul, he would do 5 and 10. I don't think that's the issue. It's 15 feet between buildings. It seemed like a non-issue to me, how you get to 15 feet between buildings. But if you want it to be 5 and 10, I think you can change that, and Pulte will do that.
Okay.
Well, why are you asking for 7.5 and 7.5?
As Kendra said, simpler math. If
Okay.
you want 5 and 10, we're fine with that.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to us. However, we blew it earlier when we didn't talk about the one thing that is the reason we're asking for the PUD, and that is we finance the trunk sewer to get here. Typically, the way this works is cities bond for trunk infrastructure. They borrow money, they put the pipe in the ground, and over time, you count on impact fees as development occurs to pay off the loan. We paid $3.7 million to bring the trunk sanitary sewer from the northeast corner of the city 1 mile to the site. As part of this application, we're going to extend that 33-inch diameter sewer another 1,000 feet, and it serves both Amberley and Bellwether. And it's about 35 feet deep. It's a very expensive, difficult sewer. We are financing it. We may not ever get repaid for that. We have a recapture agreement with the city whereby if certain properties develop over time, we get reimbursed. So developers pay the impact fee to the city, you're the instrument that just converts it to us, and we get reimbursed for some of the costs. We have no hope of being completely reimbursed for the $3.7 million. That is really the biggest thing that we've done for both Bellwether and the current application, which warrants PUD status. So I'm sorry it's been a long time. It's been 3 years, and I know there's new people here too, but I forgot to mention that history that is really critical here in this PUD application.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
You may,
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's a lot of money for you to spend. How does that benefit anyone but your buyers?
It benefits all the surrounding property owners now. it benefits any property owners who may get sewer someday, because we just paid for it to get to this area. What this does for you is a number of things. It opens up other properties for development. For areas that don't want development, but they have failing septic systems, it allows the city the option to extend sewer to those folks and resolve some septic problems.
Okay, but primarily, you incurred that expense to pay for sewer for your customers, correct?
Well, certainly, this is a win-win. Otherwise, we wouldn't be proposing it, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. That was, those were the two things I just wanted to have discussion about. So, I think Kendra's point, yeah, certainly it's another way to get to the same end.
Should we go through the resolution, do you think?
Well, the resolution, I've been through it. I don't hear anybody making any suggestions to change the resolutions. So without that, but I'm more than willing to do so if you have any questions. And there are four,
There's 4 of them.
I believe there are 4 items we have to make a recommendation on.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. You have an ordinance approving the rezoning to PUD, a resolution approving finding of fact for rezoning, a resolution approving the preliminary PUD development plan. That's where the meat of the stuff is in the third one. And then the fourth one is the resolution approving the preliminary plat. And certainly the commission can, if you find that the standards aren't met, you can make a different recommendation, or you can modify the conditions in the draft resolutions as always. But it is
And it-
15 after 9, and it'd probably be good to make a motion for discussion.
Yep.
Since we have 3 other public hearings tonight.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolutions as stated? All right, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Wu, with the condition that references to the 40-foot wide lots be removed from the packet or corrected.
Okay, yeah, we have a second. Any further discussion? To that, I think that was an error on the map, but I do not believe it's in any of the resolutions
Correct.
or the staff report, so I don't think we need to add that.
Oh, we do.
No.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
explain, you are, all 4 resolutions we're doing all at once? So what we're doing?
We could certainly do that, and that was, I
Is
was
that what
going
you
to,
were doing?
I was gonna suggest that.
Okay.
Again, unless somebody has a question or wants to do them individually.
So the motion made by Jacobs and seconded by Wu is to approve the ordinance and the 3 resolutions as drafted with condition. I think it's fair, the condition that the 40-foot lot references be revised to 44 feet. Is that still in there, or did that come up?
Well, because it was on a map.
Yeah. We don't need it in there. I think they heard that and they'll correct that.
Yeah.
Just so I get it right in this discussion, I want to make sure. So we have a motion and a second, so now the commission can discuss and modify as you desire.
I have a question.
Yes,
I'm-
sir.
I'm new here, so forgive me. These ordinance changes are related to this project, right?
Correct. The ordinance change is the map change from
Okay,
RZ2 to PUD.
so why would we make a decision to approve these resolutions before we have a vote as to whether or not to approve the PUD? shouldn't that be the order? Because if the PUD doesn't pass, why would we accept the resolutions?
You
Maybe I'm missing
absolutely can
something.
do them all at once, which was the motion, but the motioner and seconder could withdraw and do them individually if you'd like.
Yeah, ours was covering
But-
them all.
No, I get that, but why are we deciding on the resolutions before we have a decision as to whether or not we grant the PUD? Because wouldn't that make the resolutions moot, or am I missing something?
If the motion failed, the ordinance wouldn't pass.
Okay.
But I think, it is absolutely acceptable to make a motion to adopt them all at once. Whether it passes or not is another thing. But if there's a friendly request to withdraw and do them individually, the motioner and seconder could consider that.
Well, and again, I guess my concern isn't do we do them separately or all together? My concern is why are we deciding on them at all before we even decide on the PUD? Shouldn't we come to a decision on the PUD and then make a decision to adopt or reject?
I think if the motion
We're
as
out of
made
order,
was
I
to approve the ordinance amendment, and so their motion would do that. So I think you are doing that first and then acting on those in the way that happens. But again, if it's confusing, you can separate them. You could withdraw your motion and your second and start over and do them one at a time, in the order laid out in the staff report, which would be ordinance, then findings of fact, then PUD.
Well, I mean, so we approve the ordinance, but then we would want to do the findings of fact for the rezoning.
I've laid it out in
and
the ordinance
then-
to take action.
And then we'd have to do it in this order. Then we'd have to do the preliminary PUD development plan before we could approve the preliminary plat.
Not really, because they're all conditioned on each other, but if you want to take them separately, Mr. Chair, you absolutely can take them
All right,
separately.
well, we have a motion and a second, for all of them. If we want to do these individually, let's take a vote, but we should then all, vote nay. Or a majority.
We can retract the motion. If you wanna retract the motion, I second it, never mind, we can do them separately.
All right,
I'm good with that.
we'll retract the motion then. Okay, Commissioner Landerman, if we do 1, 2, 3, 4 in order, does that seem logical?
Well, it does, but I think that we should first come to a decision as to whether or not the PUD is being granted at all before we make a decision on the amendments. Because I think if the PUD fails, then the amendments are moot. If the PUD succeeds, that's the point in which I believe we should be adopting.
No,
Uh,
you
I
have
do-
to take
I don't
them in
understand why would we accept amendments to something that we haven't decided yet? And again, I'm just the new guy. You guys are a lot smarter than me.
So are you suggesting that we discuss not approving the PUD altogether for
No.
this project?
No, what I'm suggesting is that I think we should have a vote on the PUD and then have the vote on the amendments. I guess I'm unclear as to why we are voting on amendments before we have a decision on the PUD. Are the amendments for something else? Am I confused? Are the amendments for some other project, or is it for this project?
Yeah, I don't know what amendment.
Yeah,
exactly-
I'm sorry.
I don't know what amendments are.
I'm sorry, the amendments to the ordinances, why are we deciding to change our ordinances with the resolutions before we have a decision on the PUD? Does that not matter? Does the order not matter?
So if you're not gonna do them together, the ordinance matters, but the ordinance matters in this way. If you are recommending approval, you're not doing anything, by the way, remember, you're recommending to the council. But if you're recommending approval of the ordinance change, what you're doing with the ordinance is changing the color on the map
Just for this property.
for for
This
these
is
two
all for these
properties,
properties.
the map color will change. And the resolution approving findings of fact says, here's why the map should change, and it's subject to the conditions of the PUD, which is the third ordinance. That's the standards. A PUD is a new zoning district, and the PUD resolution establishes the standards for this zoning district and says it's conditioned upon approval of the requested rezoning and preliminary plat. And then the fourth item is the preliminary plat, which creates the lots. So you do, if you're not gonna do them all together, you do need to do the ordinance first, so you have a district that you're gonna then establish the standards for. Does that make more sense?
I'm sorry, no. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be, dense. It's just if the PUD is the controlling factor of these amendments, shouldn't we have a vote on the PUD first before we decide to change our code or our laws with the resolution?
When you say laws, so the
Well,
do you mean the
resolution.
standards that establish the PUD?
No, what I'm referring to are these resolutions, approving the rezoning of the property. And why would we vote to rezone the property if the PUD fails? Because we haven't had a vote on that. So what I'm saying is, why would we vote to rezone this if the PUD doesn't pass? Shouldn't we have a vote on the PUD and then say, you know what, because we voted yes, we also need to rezone, so let's vote on that?
So Commissioner Langerman, PUD is a zoning district, so that first vote would be voting for the PUD.
Oh, okay. You see, I'm new.
No, it's fine. I just think
But
that's,
when you
The
explain it, I'll
sequence
get
is
it.
right.
Okay,
The
okay.
sequence is
I
right.
get it. I understand.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for indulging me. I'll learn.
Say that.
Not a problem. Honestly, when you were talking, I was thinking, hold on a minute, maybe I don't understand. No, not at all. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
All right, moving along. So we're gonna do this in order of A, B, C, D. Do I have a motion to recommend approval for ordinance rezoning to PUD?
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance as written.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Shulak.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Nay.
You're opposed or not opposed?
I'm opposed to being opposed.
Oh, okay. And this is only our first one.
I was just gonna say, guys, come on.
All right, item B, resolution approving findings of fact for rezoning. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, Darren Camp.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item C, resolution approving preliminary PUD development plan. I have a motion.
So move.
I'll second it, Lou.
All right, all those in favor of approving the preliminary PUDs, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And finally, resolution approving preliminary plat.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat as written.
All right, I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. I believe that concludes our work for this, is that correct?
Yes, for item number one, that does.
Number one's done.
And these items, for anybody, this will go to the city council at their July 22nd council meeting. All of the items on.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
All right. All right, it's 9:25. What's our next one up on the agenda?
This one should be easy.
Gordon.
Gordon's
All right, why don't we do Gordon's Country Estate, and then maybe we
Take a break.
take a break?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
everybody agreement?
So do Gordon's first.
Yep.
I have a question. Are we not voting on the PUD?
You voted on the PUD.
just
It
did.
was
That
the
was the first
ordinance.
one.
It was the first one.
So
Just on the ordinance or approving the PUD?
you did both, and it's kind of two steps.
I'm very unhappy about that.
So the first motion, the ordinance changes the map color to say that's the PUD. And then the third vote you took on the PUD standards establishes the zoning district essentially for that
And
PUD.
did we approve this plan?
Yes, with conditions.
Yeah, that was not my intention, and it was not clear to me. So could I please just go on the record stating that I was confused when I voted, and I vote no on all of those.
I can make that change if that's allowed.
Well, we
Thank you.
can't go back
We
and make the
can't,
change,
okay.
but we
You
can
can put it
say
on
on
the
the
record.
record for the council to
Okay.
hear that, and it'll be in the minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was pretty clear where all right, whatever.
It was, I was a little surprised that it was a yes, Jim was a.
Well, I was a little surprised when I was told that this is just amending a resolution. It was not clear to me that we were actually voting on approving their plan or not.
No, we
There
can
is,
sit-
so if the hallway that actually has a light, you'll go down there
maybe
to the right.
afterwards we can go through it, and I can show
Yes.
you where it's, the language states that.
Well, I think clearly I had a question. Very unhappy about that. Oh, my fault. Lesson learned.
Okay,
And I know Natalie would be happy offline too, or I, to kind of talk through that process for the next time too. I'm sorry it was confusing, but I think you're on the record saying that, so at
Mhm.
least the council who's on the line is hearing this as well.
Mr. Chair, may I be permitted to send a letter to the city council on this matter?
you're free to do
Thank you.
anything you wish, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to item 6B, public hearing preliminary plat and variance for Gordon's Country Estates, first edition. Staff, professional staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a two-lot subdivision. It's actually a lot line adjustment. The property is guided existing residential and zoned urban reserve. It's actually north of the previous Amberley discussion on the north end of the city. The urban reserve zoning district is in the urban service boundary. It's planned to get sewer and water, but right now it's a holding zone until sewer and water are provided. And because of that, in the urban reserve, we have a 20-acre minimum lot size with 300-foot minimum lot frontage. And again, we do that to keep large chunks of land available for development. This landowner is requesting to adjust the common lot line with his neighbor. And because he needs a variance from the minimum lot size and minimum lot width standards to do that, he cannot do it as a simple lot line adjustment. He needs to do it as a plat. These existing lots that we're looking at tonight, there are two lots, and they are legal non-conforming lots of record. They were legal when they were created back in the 70s, but the rules have changed, and now they're not, and it requires this variance. So this is my very high-tech example, just for clarity. The yellow line is where the lot line is now. There's a house on the east side and on the west side, and the green line is where the lot line would move to. Again, we have two lots today, and we would have two lots if this were approved tomorrow. So lot 1 would increase from 1.3 acres to 2.14 acres, and lot 2 would decrease from 3.02 to 2.18. No new lots are created, but they're both well under the 20-acre minimum lot size. This is just about moving a lot line. There's no development proposal here. We're not reviewing any future development. These are developed lots. There is a chicken coop or a shed on lot 2 that needs to be moved to meet the setback of the new lot line. The applicant has indicated that that's actually just going to be removed from the property. the wetland delineation has been submitted and is under review. That needs to be approved before final plat. There is a wetland in the backyard, and we want to ensure that we get the wetland buffers right before we approve the final plat. Variances do have a threshold. This is a little bit tricky. You do have to meet the practical difficulties, and we did provide findings of fact where you could approve that and provided a resolution approving the variance and the preliminary plat with findings of fact. However, if you find that the practical difficulty standards have not been met, or any of the other variance standards, you should recommend denial and provide findings of fact for denial. With that, it's a pretty simple request, so I did go pretty quickly. I would recommend you open the public hearing and take comments. The applicant is on the Zoom call, I believe, and we did not receive any written comments for this application.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, at this point, we'll open up the public hearing. Again, anybody wishing to address this commission, please state your name and address at the podium. Anybody here? Anybody online?
Members of the public joining us via Zoom, if you would like to speak to the commission, please raise your hand either by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone, or by the reactions tab on the bottom toolbar. And sometimes it might be accessed, the raise your hand function might be accessed through the participants tab as well. And Mr. Chair, I don't currently see anyone raising their hand, and just to confirm, the applicant is online with us.
Okay. I may have some questions for the applicant later,
Okay.
but we'll do that during commission discussion. Okay. Well, as long as there doesn't appear to be anybody that wants to participate in the public hearing, I'll take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved, Darren Camp.
Second, Lannerman.
All right, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I didn't say aye, I meant to say aye myself, so that would be 5-0. Sorry about that. All right, this public hearing is now closed. You know what, I'll be glad to start off here first. I was out at the site and I talked to the applicant. And I also talked to a gentleman who is going to be the buyer of the other lot, Lot 2. There were no markings of exactly where that property line is, but it is referred to as a chicken coop and a fence. I'm assuming that that is actually what was referred, it's actually a shed,
Oh,
okay? And the fence looks like a dog run, a kennel. But is that the one that is depicted, back here? Because this says shed, but I just want to make sure I'm talking about the right building.
yes, that is the one right there in the center of the site, and I swear Jake said it was a chicken coop, but yes, that's the one. So
Well,
I will
you know,
correct.
cut a hole in the side, it could be. Okay, so here's my question. If this is going to be removed, who is responsible then? Is it the current landowner of Lot 2, proposed Lot 2, or is it the applicant? It would seem strange to me to require the applicant to remove a structure on someone else's land.
They are both party to this application. The applicant, Jake Overcott, will not get his escrow back until that's moved. So it
Okay,
either needs to be removed or moved as part of this project. And in speaking with Jake, before the packet went out, it is my understanding he's had that conversation and it's being removed. Now, did you hear something different?
I
Maybe
sure-
Jake should get
I
on the.
sure did.
Maybe Jake should get on the call.
I did. Now, it's not to say that, you know, Jake wasn't saying something that, you know, he would gladly do. But the new owner would like, or the future new owner would like to preserve it, keep it. Now, in looking at the shed, there is no foundation. It's a wooden structure laying on the ground. And there is electrical, to the site, or to that building. And so to simply move it is probably maybe a little bit, more involved, than just simply, I mean, it's gonna cost some money, and it's gonna take a little bit of work. Not necessarily our overriding concern here, but when I look at this diagram, and when I was out there, and they kind of pointed out a general location of the proposed property line, I stepped it off, and I came up with about 25 feet. Now, in the report, where did I write that down? Okay, in the report on page 5, down there under subdivision F, it says the chicken coop and fence on proposed lot 2 will need to be relocated or removed to comply with the 15-foot side yard accessory structure setback. On page 3, it would be the second paragraph. It would be the second paragraph under the table. It says, staff has included a condition that the coop and fence be removed to comply with the 20-foot side yard setback. So we seem to have a contradiction here as to whether or not it's 15 feet or 20 feet. But again, and it's, I only walked it off, and we can all argue about how accurate that is, but to the best of my, approximation, that shed is the shed, not the fence, the old dog kennel, but it's about 25 feet from the property line. And so I question whether or not there would actually be a requirement to have it removed.
It just has to meet the 20-foot side yard setback. I'm not finding, what page did you say it said it's 15?
Well, if you look on page 3,
That's 20, which
Yeah.
is correct.
okay, if you look on page 5, it's under section F.
Okay.
It says
Yeah,
15.
that is an error, that needs to be, it's 20.
Mr. Chair, just so you know, the applicant does have his hand raised online.
So if it doesn't need to move, as I look at the dimensions on the plan, it looks like it's not dimensioned, which if they can dimension it and the surveyor will confirm it meets the 20-foot setback, then it doesn't have to move.
Okay. Now, aside from that, though, in talking with these two gentlemen, and of course, there is a lot of space here between these two homes because of this vacant lot, even though the lot line is going to shift, neither one of them, the potential new owner would like to keep the shed, and the applicant doesn't care if it stays or goes. So if the potential new owner of Lot 2 would like to keep that, would he then have to come in and apply for a variance if it is found to be within the 20 feet?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, well then how do you handle the situation though where, they could still subdivide the lot, but the applicant isn't going to get his escrow back until that issue is resolved through the process of applying for a variance.
And it will be a
Variance.
code violation until it's done.
Yeah, because it's a non-issue.
Yeah, okay, all right. But there would be an avenue for the potential new owner to keep it if they so desired.
Well, they could ask for a variance.
Yeah.
But let me be clear, both of these landowners signed this application, and both of these landowners are party to it, even if the one landowner is selling it.
Yes, I would agree. Yep. Okay, I mean, but there's nothing contractually in here, in the report that I saw that is going to absolutely force them to move it or destroy it. It just says it needs to be done.
It's condition number 4 in the resolution,
Yeah, okay.
which actually, that's where the error is again. I don't know what happened there, but it's a 20-foot side yard setback.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
I apologize, I'll chat with Nicholas and see what's going on there, but it's a 20-foot side yard setback. The other option, of course, is when the final plat comes in, they could shift the lot line, so that shed doesn't have to move and it meets the 20-foot setback.
Okay,
Also just junk it.
all right,
Just slide the lot line back towards Jake a little more.
yeah. I recognize that the applicant is online, but before we go to applicant, I'd like to just go through the commission. Then there might be something else that he can address, just to be more efficient here with our time. Okay, Commissioner Varenkamp.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Shulak.
No questions or comments at this time, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lanterman.
Are we in the discussion phase, or are we still in the public comments
N-
portion?
The public hearing's been closed, so
Okay,
this is
thank
just
you.
commission
Yes, I have
discussion.
comments.
Yep.
So the minimum acreage required is 20 acres. Today, neither lot complies with this minimum. I think based on my read that this is due to a subdivision. If I'm wrong, please correct me. And this occurred when the homes were built. So if so, I think this checks all of the variance requirements. I thought that the applicant articulated this very well in the finding. There is a hardship. It is not the fault of the landowner, and therefore, I believe this variance should be granted. But just out of curiosity, do we know how both of these lots are now non-compliant, meaning less than 20 acres?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, when these were platted, it was in the 70s, and we had different standards. It was before we were part of the Metropolitan Urban Service Area. So you'll know there's a lot of 1 and 2 acre lots in Corcoran that are now in the MUSA, and so they're legal non-conforming lots. So they were conforming to the rules when they got created,
Okay.
and then the rules changed on them. They didn't change.
Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Lanterman?
No, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Wu?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
One more question, I guess, before we get to our applicant. So, the commission, depending upon maybe newer information, if there was going to be an effort, the commission certainly could then alter the resolution to remove the requirement that the shed be moved, correct?
You could recommend that. Staff will share that with the council, but we'll keep it in there, because we think it's important that if we're moving the lot line, we don't create nonconformities, because those do create problems over time. But you could absolutely recommend deleting that condition.
Okay. All right. Natalie, could you bring up the applicant online?
Okay, Mr. Overcott, I am going to go ahead and ask that you be unmuted if you'd like to go ahead and speak. Oh, I can't hear him.
Is he online?
Yeah, no, he's online and it says he's unmuted, but I can't hear him. I don't know why. Should just be coming over the speakers, right?
Mm-hmm. Did you turn the speakers on in the room?
Where would that be? Okay, no, right here, right?
Yeah, that's what should be on.
Yeah.
Is he unmuted?
Yeah, he's unmuted.
This is an entirely new council setup, so it's our first time using it here.
Can we get our money back on the mic? It's new. What was wrong with the old stuff? Just new for the sake of
It didn't
new.
work either.
Right.
Well, is he on the call? He needed to be let back in, he said, and you could maybe text him.
Could the applicant call in on Zoom? There should be a call-in number.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with the speakers, because it should be coming in from the speakers in the chambers, so I think it's an issue with our speakers.
Carrier.
So I don't know if it would matter if he called in, unless he called my phone, and then I could, that's the only thing I can think of. But, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong. Everything is great.
Did you play it through your laptop?
I can't undo my laptop.
Maybe calling in through through the phone would be the only option.
I don't know if it's going, so he would have to call my phone, I think.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Overcott, if you can hear me,
You can text him
okay, I'm
the
going to
number or
text
chat,
you my
but you don't
phone
give it to
number
everyone.
so that you can call it that. I apologize for the inconvenience. Okay.
I feel like I'm back in DC.
I can't even remember my work phone number right now. Sorry.
Mhm.
How much of this stuff HVAC shut down?
Yeah.
Think.
Hello, Mr. Overcott.
I am moving away from this city.
Oh, no. I'm so
What?
sorry. Well, you're changing the lot lines, though. Don't you want to keep the lot?
Oh, man. Welcome to the main event, huh?
I apologize.
No, no. That's all right. I'm just sitting on the deck getting mauled by mosquitoes. Okay. So, no, I just raised my hand just to answer any questions, but I really have nothing to say. I don't know. Felt fairly simple to me, but
Okay.
Okay, well, as we talked today, you know, I was going to suggest, or at least, throw it out to this commission to make a recommendation, to remove the requirement that this shed be, moved or torn down.
I
But if,
second that motion.
okay. Well, but there seems to be maybe some history in which you and the current landowner have agreed to tear it down and to not preserve it. So if that's the case, I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna go down that path.
No, if, I don't recall that discussion, but if, I guess if that did occur, I know he and I hadn't really talked about it, but, as a worst case scenario, sure, we could move it. But I think that now that if the fence is removed, I believe we meet that setback.
Okay, and that might be true, but you're gonna have to get somebody to come out there and
Sure.
verify that.
Okay, sure. And then back to what you had suggested. I mean, if we don't, it's got to be within a foot or so. Is it that stringent? That we've got to adhere to that?
Yes.
Or, like you say, can you make that recommendation?
Yeah, when it comes to this stuff, I guess feet matter.
Sure.
I would say without a doubt, what's probably gonna, even if the building meets that setback,
Mhm.
that old dog kennel run is not. I could see though where that's gonna probably have to for sure be removed.
Sure. And then, back to what Kendra had suggested, I mean, if we shift that lot line, I'm certainly not opposed to that either. We could lose a few feet.
Okay,
So,
How would that impact our current work here with this resolution right now?
So, Mr. Chair, I really don't think you want to create a nonconformity. So what I would just suggest is that you consider adopting the resolution as drafted, and before the council meeting, Jake can have his surveyor dimension that current setback on the plans. He's identified that, he can dimension it, and so the council will know what they're dealing with. And then, Jake, you and I could talk about whether it makes sense to move the lot line or move the shed.
perfect. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we can go ahead and approve this, get it off our plate,
Yep.
and those changes can be made
I think we
subsequent.
can solve it, and I'm happy to speak with Jake offline before the council meeting and have his surveyor dimension the setback on the plan.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, Mr. Overcott, I sure do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or discussion? All right. Being that there does not appear then to be any changes to resolution approving the preliminary plat and the variance.
Mr. Chair, we do need to change number 4.
Oh, yes,
Noted
that's
as a
correct.
20-foot setback, not 15.
That is correct.
I apologize.
Nope. Okay, so, to recommend approval as amended, the preliminary plat and variance, is there a motion?
So moved, Camp, with what we just talked about. How's that? I think that covers everything. Cool.
Okay. Second?
Second, Schleck.
All right, we have a second. All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, resolution to recommend approval is passed. Thank you, everybody.
This is July 22nd as well, to City Council.
Correct. All of the items on tonight's agenda will go to the July 22nd council.
All right, it is now 8
Anybody
minute-
want to switch council meetings with me?
All right, it is 8 minutes, 7 minutes to 10. Should we take a 5, 6, 7 minute break? Resume back at 10 o'clock? Okay. This hearing is in recess.
Thank you guys for your patience.
Yeah, and he told me he logged.
I don't know if I can get out.
He told me he logged off a while ago. I can call
He
him.
said logging back in, need Natalie to let me in on mine, or
Keep jerking.
gave up.
Sir.
Because I don't look at this all the time.
Well, yeah, that's the only.
I look different live? Is that better or?
I don't know
All right.
if he's on the iPad.
Oh, thank you. And again, thanks for coming. What are you here for?
That's him.
Can I ask you that?
Given our laws, though, I think in case there's, like, you better figure out how to.
Who do I look like?
I am over
It is so hot.
But the things that
Ooh, I like that one. I like that one.
I don't want to, that's just me, that's just me.
What's that? Tasmanian devil. He's my hero. I've been one of those.
Oh my god, oh my god.
You're here for Tucker. Which one? One?
Yeah.
She can be our, she truly is. Never asking for a lot of things.
Lindsay isn't picking.
Your property square feet we need to.
I wonder if
He went to bed.
I know, but everybody's sleeping, and I can't find Just Spicy's phone number. Do you know her cell phone?
The property that we talked to, they didn't want any development around it, period. The Red Barn didn't want anything around it, period. And look what happened. And it's gonna happen. It's just prime real estate and everything is good.
When do you think the city will get?
I'm just worried about Nichols' second, I guess.
Or what?
I'm just curious to know how much the population of Corcoran is gonna go up. 2010
I honestly,
I texted him and said we're having
We know
trouble.
what it is now, 6,400 people.
Oh, it's gotta be bigger than that. Really? Even with the 2020 census, it's only 6,400? I'll bet by 2030 it's 10,000.
2020 to 2030. See, I was in Maple Grove when we were at 34,925.
You were on the planning commission when my wife and I used to go to Crossland United Methodist.
Yes, sir.
And they presented to the planning commission.
I'm a member of Crosswood.
I don't know if you remember that planning commission meeting, but it was closing in on midnight. And people were going, we really want to get into this now. And there was a thunderbolt.
I was there.
Yeah. And
I was
everybody
up
went,
there.
oh, I guess maybe we ought to talk about it.
I was there, man. Absolutely. And I was on the planning commission, and I did not stand in the way of development and changes and stuff, no matter how bad I wanted to. I can't take somebody that's been,
Yeah.
and all 22 of us neighbors over there by Rush Creek Golf Course, the developer came in
Freaking
and
out that we need like a recess.
exactly the same, everybody, and we all got out at the same time. Now look what it changed to. 7 months after.
Yeah, because everyone's
Down.
freaking out on me. Not
Market
everyone's
fell.
freaking, but I had like 3 people
Year and a
message
half
me. I'm like,
after
I need
that,
the break too,
the
though.
developer let it all go back to the finance.
Maybe,
4 years after that, about 10 years ago,
Nice
8 years ago,
thinking. I like that.
the developer bought it back from the bank at 30 cents on the dollar.
Oh, because then the chair
now-
speaking to how
what's
odd.
up?
And the rest of they say it's
Yes, sir.
What the heck?
I was gonna say, you guys look familiar.
damn.
Yeah, I guess they couldn't hear
Well,
the
most
chair.
of the time we're dark and light.
But you can see that there's
But I'm saying, from the old Crosswind side and stuff, you guys look
Yeah.
familiar.
We were there,
I wondered,
I used to work for the Secret Service, so I did,
2000.
a lot of data
Five to
breaches,
8.
cyber investigations.
Or,
Shut down.
no, it was later than that. It was more like,
Oh, no.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it was like 5 to 8, 2005, 2008, 2009, something like that. And then we kind of wandered around for a while. We lived in Edenbury for 10 years and we kept thinking, we'll go back for church. Well, that was
Maybe I
night,
accidentally
2 or 3
muted
times
myself
a week
earlier.
at 28
But what happened was, there was a message that was.
where do you church now?
Messiah Church in Plymouth, 6 and 1.
Very
I'm
nice.
just gonna have to let it go. I don't know if there's anything I can do. I don't know.
And we loved
Yeah, so, what that is.
You're-
the
it's a
transfer,
good neighborhood,
that's
but
a
I-
gang called,
I know it's not my property, I want the same good neighborhood to continue into the.
Oh, absolutely. We do too.
I do not want to intrude on
they
anyone.
are,
I will not.
you know, I probably have,
Very from
did
the
you see
wetland.
what the message
I
looked
did.
like? Okay, because I have copies of it, I
Yeah,
can
I'm
show you.
sure
there's-
you've
and-
seen all big versions of that.
Yeah, so what they're doing is
Well,
they're
and what
encrypting.
because I'm not going to speak for my wife, I'm not going to speak for
So,
anybody.
because
Is if this
traditionally
gets turned down,
ransomware
we could end up with a self-storage and a storage of
Word documents,
You know,
PowerPoint,
because she's got some rights there. You know,
email files. So it would encrypt certain
but I think she's done a lot.
Mamba does things a little
She's
differently.
done very well.
Yeah.
She's one of the
Just
best. I
instantly
truly,
encrypt
truly
your
agree with that.
Yeah.
And in very
Good to see you,
broken,
man, in person.
they tell you, you gotta pay us X amount of money in Bitcoin,
It was Bitcoin, of
you know,
course.
you can contact me via this code email address. Yeah, they're terrorists, is what that is.
Okay, we could all take our seats again. We will resume the planning commission meeting, and I know it's getting late, please bear with us. Okay, so next up on the agenda We have item 6C, which is another public hearing for rezoning preliminary plat and preliminary PUD development plan for Cook Lake Highlands. And we would love to entertain our professional staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a public hearing for Cook Lake Highlands. It is again, a PUD, a preliminary plat, and a rezoning to PUD. This is the site. You did review this in April, a development proposal on this site. The request was denied by the council at the April 22nd meeting, and then the applicant met with neighbors, council members, and requested that the council allow them to submit a new application. Our code says if an application is denied, you cannot submit a substantially similar application for 6 months. And that's to avoid somebody just kind of trying to wear you down. But the council reviewed it, and they did approve that request on May 27th. So this is considered a new application. However, it is very similar to the old application. The 4 main changes are the addition of 2 additional conifer trees and 1 additional river birch to each of the 12 lots that butt up against Bass Lake Crossings on the east. And you can sort of see that black line on the landscape plan. Those same 12 villa homes will be restricted to single level homes. The Applewood Point Co-op on the east side of the site has been revised to a flat roof building 49 feet high. And the memory care facility on the south has been revised to include a kitchen and a bath in each unit, which now allows them to be counted as dwelling units under the HUD standards and the Met Council standards, which means it counts towards our density requirements. So it is within the allowed density range for this district. The property, again, the zoning map shows where the property is at the tip of the red arrow on the east side of the city. The request is to rezone from mixed residential, RMF2, to planned unit development. And so when we do a rezoning for a PUD is a new zoning district, but we use the existing zoning district as the base, as the standard to review it. And all of the proposed uses are allowed in the RMF2 district except the assisted living memory care. Those are not allowed in the RMF2 district. However, since people live in the memory care, it is housing, and you could find that that's appropriate in a residential zoning district. So again, the daycare is permitted in this residential zoning district, but the memory care is not. A PUD is a negotiated zoning district, and as we've discussed already tonight, it is intended to promote more creative development and provide the city benefits that would not otherwise be possible with a standard subdivision. The flexibility requested is for shoreland standards. Almost the entire site is in the shoreland overlay district. So shoreline standards for minimum lot size and width for the villas, as well as the side yard setbacks from both the shoreline and RMF2 districts for the villas, shoreline and RMF2 district standards for the senior co-op maximum building height, shoreline maximum impervious surface coverage, parking stall length, and a 6-foot fence in the front yard setback. All of these were part of the PUD flexibility. Nothing has changed in terms of that since the last application. And it's true that the things given in exchange for the flexibility have generally remained unchanged with one exception. The applicant is requesting or proposing to dedicate the Outlot C, 8.36 acres in the northeast corner, to the city in exchange for partial credit. So they would dedicate the land but not take the full value of the land as part dedication. The Planning Commission did review that at their meeting in April and did not recommend that, but we are going to bring it back to them again in July. So that is a potential bonus where you'd be getting more park dedication than is technically required under the code if the Parks Commission and the council accepted that proposal. The PUD standards have been evaluated in the staff report. The council and commission must review the request against those standards. I'm not going to review them in my report because you've had a chance to look at them. Density was an issue, so I wanted to highlight this land use requires 8 to 10 units per acre, and this will comply. It's 7.2 pre-development net density and 9.2 post-development net density, which is the density the Met Council reviews for compliance. So it's right in the middle of what it's supposed to be. And the main reason it now complies is because they've changed those memory care units to add kitchens, and now they're counted as units. Nothing changed on the plan itself. The PUD development plan, one of the benefits is this city land. They would dedicate this parcel of land in yellow, using the pointer that you can't see, but that parcel in yellow would be dedicated to the city for a lift station as part of the project. In the central portion of the project, really wish I had a pointer, the Met Council has a little parcel of land, the exception piece north of the co-op, and there is a access aisle on the east side of the property that provides access to that Met Council lift station. That same easement will allow fire lane to service the Applewood Point condo. This image was intended to give some context. It fades out a little bit on the screen to show this in relationship with the Maple Grove development that's proposed to the east, as well as in comparison to the Bass Lake Crossings to the west. Again, the mix of uses is 20 single-family villa homes on the plan. Staff continues to recommend removal of one of the flag lots. Lots 11 and 12 are flag lots. Flag lot means a lot with a really skinny frontage that extends way back and then widens out to a larger parcel. If one of those was removed, I think it would be more consistent with the intent of the district. The senior co-op units are still 102 units in Applewood Point, the daycare, and then the assisted living. Again, the shoreland really is a restrictive application for this property and affects a lot of the development flexibility that's requested. The only change on this is instead of the maximum building height being 55, of course, the co-op as it was previously, it's now down to a 49-foot building height. The Shoreland Overlay District has a 25-foot maximum building height, and our ordinance has a 35-foot standard building height. This rendering just gives you an example of a different view of what the project would look like if approved. The trail, I skipped over, I think, the trail that was built with Bass Lake Crossings on this property would remain as it is today. Utilities are available, and again, one of the PUD benefits is they'll work with the city and the Met Council for access to that lift station site behind the Applewood Point, and will donate a lot to the city for a city booster station. Transportation improvements on 10 will be designed, bid, and managed by the city, but the developer will pay for those. And they are dedicating some excess land for County Road 10 just because of the geometrics of the parcel of land. The city does continue to recommend a strong pedestrian access between the assisted living and the apartment or co-op building on the north. There is some flexibility for parking stall width. Again, standard stormwater. The pond was moved to the center of the site, and that did help improve the open space preservation in the corner from the original plan. There's some sound.
Figured out the sound. We should be good.
Again, the code does not require tree preservation, but it is encouraged, and this plan preserves wooded areas, most of which would be up in that parkland area, or proposed parkland potential open space. Some modifications to the landscape plan are required. again, we have, nice renderings, we don't have the detail, for the buildings, but I do believe the buildings will comply with our, ordinance requirements in, both the design standards as well as the Southeast District. The building height was one of the big changes. This is the new concept for the Applewood Point building. It's a flat roof now. If you remember, the last time you saw it, it had a pitched roof, a more residential character. It's now flatter roof. These are some images of what the villas could look like. She does not have, as my understanding, does not have a committed builder, but that's the concept similar to Bass Lake Crossings. These are MI examples. This is an example of what the daycare facility would look like. I think generally, again, complies. And the assisted living. These are some images from a different facility, and something like this would comply with our ordinance standards. There is a public sidewalk along this new 74th Avenue, which will connect the Bass Lake Crossings development down to 10 and then connect into the Maple Grove development. And the sidewalks and trails do need to run that entire length of that street, one on the north and one on the south. The staff report does recommend that pedestrian crossing. We do continue to recommend that connecting sidewalk be looked at. The park dedication, like I said, the Parks Commission will be looking at this at their meeting on July 15th, so I don't think the Planning Commission should spend a lot of time. But again, it's important to understand what's being proposed. They are proposing 8.6 acre outlot C, 8.36 acre outlet C. Of that, about 3 or 4 acres are usable. The other areas are wetland and ponding, which we wouldn't typically give credit for that. If we were to take land, and again, our comp plan does not show land here, so we would not typically take land if it's not on the comp plan. The applicant is proposing that in response, I believe, to some comments from neighbors. But we would not typically recommend taking land if it's not on our plan, because again, as we talked about earlier, our comp plan identifies where we want our parks. We take those when we can from developers, and we use our cash to buy land in other places and trails and those kinds of things. So we do like to get cash when we don't have a park. Park's recommendation was cash at about $400,000, a little more than that. The applicant's proposal, again, is to provide some land in exchange for the $90,000 required for the single-family villa lots, which, if you do the math, is probably a good deal for the city. The land itself is worth more than that if we wanted the land. So from a financial, it may be, but there's a cost to taking parkland. So this is the preliminary plat. I would note there's a condition in the staff report. This doesn't match the site plan. Outlot C in here is divided up under the new concept. The exemption piece in the center is the Met Council lift station, and not part of this plat. So, the city does have, as we talked about earlier tonight, a high level of discretion in approving or denying a PUD. And so we did prepare both alternatives for the commission for both approval, which requires 4 actions, an ordinance rezoning to PUD, which changes the map, a resolution approving findings of fact for the rezoning of the map, a resolution approving the preliminary PUD development plan, and that establishes the standards for the PUD, and a resolution approving the plat, which just creates the lot. Or, if you find that the conditions have not been met, we have forwarded basically the last resolution you saw, which denies the request. Again, we recommend that you open the public hearing and take comments. We did receive one additional email after the packet went out that was emailed to you. So for folks who sent emails that were included in the packet or were emailed out afterwards, those are entered into the public record. And again, Mr. Chair, we've given you 2 options moving forward. And the applicant does have a presentation. Would you like to have her do that before the public hearing, or how would you like to handle it?
I think we would prefer to have it before, but if I may, just to get this out. So on the resolution in our packet, approving the preliminary PUD development plan, on page 2, the table. So the maximum principal building height under co-ops, currently, it says 55 feet there. If we were to recommend approval of this resolution, we would want to change that to 49.
Yeah,
Would
I
that be correct?
apologize, that was a
Nope,
scram.
no need to apologize, I just,
Yep.
if we need to do it. So if we're gonna do this, again, we'll, and any other changes, but I just wanted to get that out
Thank
right
you.
away, so, okay. All right, Beth, you have a presentation for us? Good to see you again.
I'm Beth Instead with Track Development. Is that? Yeah, covered. And as Kendra mentioned, I have been Mr. Landing, so we
I've listened to you.
Yeah, you, okay. So, it's nice to be here in person. As Kendra said, thank you, there's not been a significant amount of change to our proposal, except that we've got some support, and I was, after the April 22nd City Council meeting, I was contacted by the neighbors and asked to meet with them out on the site. And, after COVID, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I am really grateful to be able to get back out on more land and walk it. And that's sort of my shtick. And it was nice, thank you, for the neighbors to reach out to me to do that. It was an odd time prior to that. So probably 3 or 4 days after the council meeting, I did meet with the neighbor, two of the neighbors, Jerry and Ray Tucker, and we walked the site for about 2.5 hours, and I think they found it to be very helpful. At that time, I had not yet had the engineers back out on the site to mark some monuments and some elevations and existing versus proposed. And about a week later, the neighbors invited the rest of the neighborhood, along with council members and some staff. And I had been, one of the council members had recommended me, actually 2 of the council members had recommended that I reach out to Councilor Vadema, who has a drone, and ask him to walk the site and help us to be able to articulate the heights and distances and things like that. I was a little concerned, not sure what we were going to find and how it was going to go, but it was very helpful. He brought the drone and allowed us to walk the site together, and we were able to take this first house and show the height. It's about 26 feet high to the tip of the roof. And again, if you'll remember, the Shoreland Overlay District has a restriction of 25 feet. So even a one-story single-family home doesn't meet that restriction. And I don't know if it's that the standards have changed and the roof pitches have changed, but that's a real possibility since that overlay district was instigated. So we got a chance to look carefully at where we talked, Mr. Commissioner Jacobs, we talked last time with the planning commission about elevations and what was that going to look like. So we got a really good opportunity. I brought my little notes out to talk about and identify where the house would sit in the drone. So then we pretty much walked the whole site. We walked the perimeter of the site. We're able to say, here's where the cul-de-sac's gonna be, here's where these houses will be, here's the end of the cul-de-sac. Had some monuments marked for that. And then walked, and walked over here and walked past the Beaver piece and was able to show where the memory care would be, what the height of that roof would be. And it's very interesting. It's very different when you go out on the site, and I think everybody had a preconceived idea of where things were going to be, potentially that they were going to be closer. So I felt that was helpful. And then I had the engineers stake the proposed versus the existing elevations, and then Councilor Bodema was able to go up with the drone and show us, and even though we were probably sitting 7 or 8 feet higher than where the first floor would be, he was able then to just subtract and show everybody about where the roof would be, the top of the roof. And I think that helped me. It was interesting. And then again, we continued to walk down the Met Council. This is currently a temporary easement that I've granted to the Met Council because their easement legally, at which they have been granted by the sellers of the property, is actually right here. And it's been just found by the Met Council that it's just an extremely expensive intersection to build even just for their access. It was about $600,000+ just to get them access to go down. So I did grant them temporary and said, we'll wait to see what happens with this, and then maybe you can share in the cost to build that expensive intersection. So once we walked, we actually walked through the wetland. It was a nice dry, unfortunately too dry right now, but we're able to walk up and around and get a really good feel for that 3.3 acres of woodland. And it is woodland, and it is a bit of a wildlife refuge because we've got M.I. Homes, the Bass Lake Crossings property, has this wetland as sort of a woodland wildlife area too. So the reason that we're proposing this is with this plan we can do that. Now, the neighbors asked a lot of questions, and I hope I answered most of them. We talked about that open space and dedicating that, and I think everybody can see, and when you're out there on the site, you can see that wooded area is actually a benefit to, it's not as much of a benefit to these people because they have a nice wetland wooded area here, but it really is nice for the trail. So the people that walk on the trail get to experience that. And then I would say for this property owner, that's a significant and valuable buffer for these people looking south. So it really does take into account all properties, and it does provide a benefit to everybody adjacent to it. And I think the trail it gives it. I think the wildlife corridor just gets extended, and I think it's a nice addition. But when we finished walking the site, we talked a little bit about. They really wanted to get a good feel, a better understanding of this proposal, but they also wanted to know, Beth, as a developer or another developer, a different developer, in your professional opinion, what else could be developed here based on the mixed residential guiding and zoning? And I said, as we had talked before at the Planning Commission, and even at the council, and even on some of the walks with the council members, is, well, Beth, you could do all townhouses here. And so I asked my engineer, let's take the M.I. Homes townhouses, and I do have a copy of them here to show you. I actually might even have it. No, I don't have it on the screen. But they are 3-story townhouses that are about anywhere from 6 to 8 units in each lot. So their pads are large. So that would be a massive grading undertaking. We would be able to do all townhouses. We would only be able to get about 126 townhouses on the site. It would be all townhouses, and we would still have an impervious issue, if not a much more significant impervious issue. And we would have a height issue. We would still need flexibility on the impervious calculation and on the height calculation. And we would not meet the comprehensive guide plan. We would have to ask for an amendment because we wouldn't meet the density. So with that said, I've always felt that since we made the change from where the apartments were, which was a significant change from our first planning commission presentation in March, I think that the residential single family and 20 residential single family lots is a great transition for what's already there. I think it takes, it honors the people that live there, and yes, there will be some trees lost, but I will tell you that when we walked with the neighbors, you know, and here's the existing trail that comes in. So it does come into our property right now, and then back onto the Bass Lake Crossings property. These are the most significant trees in this area. These trees, there is a lot of buckthorn. There's a line of some trees here that are box elder, and the rest is a lot of brush. But the neighbors said, you know, we like that brush. It covers, it gives the trail a really nice feeling. So I said to them, I will do my best to save what I can as far as that brush is concerned. But really, honestly, the more I can save, the more valuable these lots are too. So, you know, to be able to leave some of that around would be great, and we will try to do that. And again, I want to go back and just remind everybody that we have been pinched in this site, and I'm not sure, you know, if you're new and if you have an understanding of what's been happening, but Hennepin County has come and is requiring, you know, you 40 feet but an additional 20 feet, so we're giving them 60 feet. And Met Council needs 15 feet for their access and for pipes, so they've already put the pipes in here. In this, the city actually has 15 feet for their water pipes too. So we've got a 30-foot easement on this side of the property. We have a large easement that's not showing here that runs here and then to the Met Council in order to serve the sewer and everything for these future, for this property, Bass Lake Crossings, for future development to the north. And then we've got the trail that comes along. So we kind of, and we have the Met Council property that was purchased from the landowner. And that serves, those are all infrastructure elements that serve the rest of the community. And it was interesting when Paul Hewer brought up, or when you discussed the trunk issues and the infrastructure, public infrastructure, and the cost of development. And right now, the city of Corcoran doesn't have a mechanism in place that can charge the rest of the community for improvements that the rest of the community benefits from, whether it's roads or pipes or sewer and water. And so right now in the system, the developer bears that burden. And this particular intersection that needs to be built that way is an example of that, and it's over $1.1 million in feasibility study that I did. And when that happened, when we got that feasibility study, I said, I can't afford to do that. And so I reached out to the Met Council, Judy Johnson, and she's the district representative, and she met with me, and I said, you know, the Met Council, I really need some help from the Met Council to pay for this because it's their access too. And so they've stepped up, and we're in negotiations with them. And the city of Maple Grove does have a trunk mechanism system in place, and they'll be paying for part of that too. So that helps, but they're paying for it also because they're using it as access for their project. So So it's been a lot of collaborating and coordinating and working together to make this work. And the neighbors have asked me, there's a couple different things Kendra did mention in the report, but the neighbors and I came up with, I thought it was 3 at first, but then it became 5. and it was, it's the additional trees, and it's the, I have said that we will commit to doing a 1-story Rambler walkout or flat on grade or daylight, so that it's a 1-story up against the Fast Lake crossings, and then we also there's been discussion about trying to continue this trail. So the city of Maple Grove is we're going to have them tie into our fire lane here, and this fire lane is going to be privately maintained by Applewood and the Met Council. We're working on an agreement with them, and it will be for public pedestrian traffic. It is a fire lane that is required in order to have the fire protection, and for the fire trucks to be able to get all the way around the building. But I think sharing it with Met Council, a portion of it with Met Council, and then also allowing it to serve as a public pedestrian walkway in connection to the trail and trail. Did I miss anything with the neighbors? Trees, the trail we did talk about, and I can't commit to building a trail through a wetland, so we thought maybe we talked a little bit about, do we just mow it and we have something where people can walk? I don't think, but this is kind of a nice connection to make, and it's a circle, so, but it is a wetland. Just make sure. And if I haven't, I'm here to answer questions, so I would encourage you to ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'm no doubt there will be some. Sure. So,
Can we ask the questions while she's standing there with the microphone?
absolutely, if you have one, sure, apologize.
Thank you. Do I understand, and hello, it's nice to meet you. Do I understand that this is but did I see one of the buildings, is that 4-story?
Yes.
Could you tell me how many other 4-story buildings are there in Corcoran?
My goodness, not yet. I don't know of any yet.
None?
No.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about this, it's a great question. This is a mixed residential tract, and in the language for that mixed residential tract, it does include the reason we, it encourages a variety of houses. So right now, Corcoran does not have Applewood Co-op or anything like it. This is a different kind of housing, and it is in demand, and it is
It's for our Zoom callers,
Okay.
yeah.
So, so if I were to build those townhouses, we would have a more significant impervious, issue. So it does allow for more green space to go up and more impervious property. So it does help in that regard too.
Okay,
And I do, and Alex Hall from United Companies is here also. If you have any questions, I could tell you a little about Thank you.
I just have one follow-up question for you. Make sure you don't drop it. So, and I mean this very respectfully, okay? On April 1st, this commission denied this project 4-0. On April 22nd, the city council voted to deny this 5-0. And here's where I get to my point. The section 1070.010 of the zoning ordinance reads, whenever an application for an amendment has been considered and denied by the city council, the planning commission, or city council, kind of redundant, the word shall, I think, is very instructive there. Shall not consider a similar application for an amendment affecting substantially the same property again for at least 6 months. This is not October 15th, and I understand that the city council, agreed to this. Can you tell me why? I'm trying to understand, why are we listening to this before October 15th?
Thank you.
I don't know, obviously. Great question. There also is, the city council has the right to waive that if they so choose. The neighbors contacted the city council and asked them to do so, and wrote some letters to the city council asking them to reconsider this because they were in support of it.
Listen, I haven't seen any of the letters. I saw a letter that was written from, I believe you, isn't this,
Yeah.
Trek Development?
Yeah, the city, you can check with the city council.
You wrote on 5/19/21 a letter to the mayor, city council, and staff.
And there were.
That's the only letter I've
There were
seen.
2 or 3 letters. But originally there
And-
was there were letters written to the city council for that particular reason, for them to waive, for them to consider waiving.
Mr. Chair, it was in the 527 council packet. It did not come to you. It was part of the request to
Yeah.
revisit it. So if anybody's interested in that, they can find it. But again, Beth should be talking to the commission, not the audience.
Yeah, and I think at this point, it is a fact that the city council did vote to grant you the ability to do this application within that 6-month period. So I don't know that I'm wanna dig up the questioning of the reasoning, or the legality of that. I just know that it has happened, correct? And that's what brings you here today. 6 months or not 6 months, the city did grant you this right. And if the city wants to revoke that, that'll have to be them. We don't have that power to do that.
Could I ask you one very quick follow-up question? To me, it seems unusual that people would just proactively on their own write letters asking for a development. Did you ask them to do that, or did they do that on their own? Okay. Do you know how many? Is it 2 or 3? Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop this right now because this is a public hearing. And so to that extent, if you have those comments, you're more than welcome after her presentation, but people can't hear what you're saying and we can't get it on record, okay? So let's stick with your presentation, and when you're done, then we'll be glad to take up issues from anybody else, so if we could, please.
So if I can answer your question, and I'd just like to say that the council, if you watch the council meeting, I think it was on May 22nd, they will actually acknowledge in that meeting that they received letters. So, and that the neighbors actually did contact them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Beth at this time? All right, let us open up the public hearing. Again, if you wish to address the commission here in person, please address it at the podium and give your name and address. And I believe you have cards already filled out.
I do. So
Okay.
first up, we have Sue Zappa.
Good evening. Soon I'll be able to say good morning. So, I did prepare a written statement of my address, 74 Corcoran. And I did prepare a statement, and probably have seen it, and I'm not sure if the timing, if anybody else has, so I'll just kind of quickly read through it. It says, on May 12th, 2021, I was in a group of neighbors that walked the land that is included within the Cook Lake Highlands PUD development plan. I was very appreciative of the time Beth Husted took to explain and point out where various structures would be located. However, there are many items that I still feel need to be addressed before a recommendation for approval. The 20 single-family villas are requested to have PUD flexibility for number one, flexibility from the shoreline standards to reduce the minimum lot size and width for the villa home lots. Number two, flexibility from the shoreline and RMF2 district standards to reduce the side yard setback for the villa home lots, shown as requested as 5 feet. The previous council and its city council has discussed single-family district standards at a July 25th, 2019 work sessions, and the consensus was to maintain 15 feet between buildings. From my experience as a resident in Bass Lake Crossing, the 5 feet setback is not adequate for access to the back of the homes for deck building, patio installation, or fire emergency, etc. Because like right now, if I have to take anything other than a wheelbarrow from the exits in my backyard, it's just not doable. The density of the villas are out of proportion to the natural characteristics of the site. The natural resource inventory map indicates a high-quality maple basswood natural community and a rare species occurrence on the site, which will be impacted by the number of villas. The villa site's layouts should be reworked. Lots 10 and 12 don't meet the minimum 50-foot lot width. Staff report recommends removal at least one lot to meet the minimum width. Lots 8 through 12 have the existing trail running through the backyards. It would seem impossible to build a deck or have 2 conifer/murder birch that Beth has stated she will provide. Not only that, walking on that trail, I would not want to walk that close to residents. There are 8 driveways on this cul-de-sac from lots 9 through 16. It appears this will make for no on-street parking or room for adequate snow removal. The PUD flexibility requested by the developer results in deviations from the applicant provisions of the zoning ordinance. They're not offset by the PUD benefits proposed by the applicant, and therefore are in conflict with the applicable provision of the ordinance. I
I would like more information on location and retaining walls. The city of Corcoran does not have a tree preservation ordinance. However, the applicant does provide a tree conservation plan that shows 30%, only 30% of the woodland areas on site being preserved. I will miss that other 70%. There's a bullet point in Ms. Husted's narrative dated 5/19/2021. It says, community and corridor infrastructure improvement. Collaborate with public entities and neighboring community to coordinate and share in the cost to construct the shared access intersection. I'd like to know what the cost would be to the city of Corcoran. My concerns for the park and trail will be addressed at their July meeting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Jerry Tucker. And then just a gentle reminder that if you could speak directly into the mic, I keep getting messages from people over Zoom.
That they can't hear.
Yeah.
I can't tell this is.
Thank
Anyway,
you very much.
Jerry Tucker, I live at 7402 Fur Lane. In your packet, I'm lot number 16. My lot backs up to, sits next to 74th Avenue, and the walking trail goes around two sides of my house. You also have a letter in your packet from me and my wife, and I'm not going to read it other than to say two things. At the earlier presentation about Bellwether, people were talking about being good neighbors. Beth has been an exceptionally good neighbor and has listened, despite all the picking of nits by the neighbors. She has listened well and has offered a number of really good, I think, compromises that make this a much more attractive plan. Second thing is, Commissioner Jacobs said this at the March meeting when the apartment building was still in play and it all got turned down, that this was not a good look for Corcoran. I can sit on my patio and I can look at Corcoran Lions Park and I can look at a self-storage facility that's being built across the street, and I'll tell you, that's not a good look coming to Corcoran. And I think Beth has done exemplary work putting together a program. It isn't perfect. And there, everybody'd like to see 100% of the trees stay. I would too. But she's done a heck of a job listening to the neighbors, making compromises, and putting together a package that I think is attractive for a person coming into Corcoran. And as Commissioner Behrenkamp said, development's going to go on. That land's going to get developed one way or another. And I think this is an excellent alternative for you to do. Well, we all look better in person.
Thank you.
And then next we have Lynn Alberts.
My name is Lynn Alberts, and I live at 7490 Fur Lane. And it's nice to see everybody instead of Zoom. I actually can see people. There's been many hours of discussion concerning Cook Lake development over the last few months. You've all been involved in it. I would like the Planning Commission to address some concerns I have about the current proposal, which has not significantly changed from the last submission. If the memory care unit is approved, how will Bass Lake Crossing be assured that another commercial property will not be allowed to be built on that 3 acres at the entrance to Bass Lake Crossing? That's a big concern, because that would set precedence to have another commercial property at that 3 acres. There is no light plan for Applewood Point in the PUD. I'm concerned about the amount of light that will be used for the parking lot and building. The building is U-shaped and faces Bass Lake Crossing. If you drive by Havenwood at night, it looks like a baseball field lit up at night. And everybody's concerned about trees. I grew up in a small town, so I love trees. I am concerned about how many trees will be cut down for the 12 villas on the Bass Lake Crossing off-road trail. The land form review states that at least one lot should be eliminated. The last planning commission meeting, there was a discussion about having 8 driveways entering the cul-de-sac. There was also concern about flagpole driveways. Beth has eliminated the 20-foot trail easement between lots 12 and 13 that was going to tie into the trail, the off-road trail. So lots 11 and 12 could be eliminated, and lot 10 could become the end of the cul-de-sac, and like next to lot 13. This would save approximately 150 feet of trees along the side of the trail. This is a unique trail because it allows people to actually walk through woods rather than somebody's backyard. Corcoran wants to have a rural atmosphere. This would be a great way to have that in a residential neighborhood. Now, you were talking about the 7.5 feet also. This plotting is at 5 feet. So if you add another 5 feet to each development, now you're adding another 50 feet. So then you'd have a problem getting all 12 units along that road. So I guess somebody needs to look at that and say, okay, you need to eliminate 1 or 2 more lots. Beth just talked about the trail that we talked about at one time. Stated that the trail could be built. A trail could be built at the access road north of Bass Lake Crossing, and follow the buffer zone to the fire road by Applewood Point. Nothing is mentioned in this PUD concerning this trail. This trail could be made from crushed concrete. I know Beth said maybe you've got a wetlands area, but it would not have to be maintained by the Parks and Trails, not require a 20-foot easement. This trail could serve as an interpretive trail and thus not require a 15-foot setback from the edge of the buffer zone. This trail would help compensate for the loss of the trees along the off-road trail. This trail would be used by 102 Applewood Point units, Bass Lake Crossing north and south, Villas at Cook Lake, Highlands. It could also be used for the New Horizon children to teach them about plants, birds, and wildlife in Corcoran. This trail would also allow everyone in the community to enjoy the same views of the lake and golf course that Applewood Point will enjoy. The city has a tremendous natural resource asset in Cook Lake. It is one of only 5 named lakes in Corcoran. The views from Applewood Point are million-dollar views of the lake and Rush Creek Golf Course. This is a natural resource inventory map. Identifies this property as high-quality maple basswood natural community with rare species occurrence on this property. There are sandhill cranes that come back to this property every year. There are also turkeys, pheasants, owls, ducks, geese, deer, many varieties of songbirds, hummingbirds, and even coyotes. Page 3 of the land form report states that the city may impose reasonable requirements in a PUD not otherwise required if the city deems it necessary to promote general health, safety, or welfare of the community. Code section 1040.140 subsection 2E states that a PUD should preserve and enhance natural features and open spaces. Code section 1050.010 subsection 2A5 states that the purpose is to provide wildlife habitat and thereby support the maintenance of diversity of both plant and animal species within the city. I guess the last question I have is the city getting more benefits from the PUD than what they're giving up from getting out?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so at this time I don't have any cards. Was there anyone that did not turn in a card that would like to speak? Okay, and then members of the public joining us by Zoom, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you're joining us by phone, you do this by pressing *9. On your computer, you should be able to find the raise your hand function along the bottom bar of your screen under the reactions tab. And some mobile devices might have this option under the participants tab. And Mr. Chair, no hands are raised at this time.
Okay. Is there a lot of people online?
Right now, it's gone down to 8, so yeah, a few people. But.
Okay. All right. Being that there doesn't seem to be any further input through the open public hearing, Chair will take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved there, Kemp.
I'll second Lannerman.
Okay, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, this public hearing is now closed, and we will move to commission discussion and recommendation. Is there anybody that would like to jump in feet first? Okay.
to look this up before coming today, but how is building height calculated in the city of Corcoran? And levels versus stories? And also, is height calculated from the average grade plane? Because when I look at this graphic that was provided to us, that's this one, I'm counting 5 levels and an average grade plane that would, and I realize this is just a rendering, but I'm just looking at it more as much for my education as well as to how this is construed as a 4-story, or how you get to 4 stories, because at 49 feet and 5 stories, I can tell you that is pretty unachievable.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we don't have a zoning district that measures by number of stories or levels. All of our districts are measured by building height. And building height does measure the average grade, and then depending on the roof line, it varies. So it's the vertical distance from the average grade of the building to the deck line of a mansard roof, the cornice of a flat roof, the midpoint on a pitched roof.
So you're saying to the top of the parapet in the case of a flat roof?
The top of the cornice of a flat roof.
That would not include the elevator overrun, correct? You're talking about the general.
Correct. It does not include those. Those are allowed to exceed. And I don't have a dimension for that, so certainly if this were to move forward, they have to show compliance with that building.
Okay. And then I did have reservations about memory care units becoming dwelling units versus sleeping rooms. And that's to do with my background. I'm an